As 2009 approaches, we might ask ourselves, should I be planning? Well, I think there's a dilemma of what's sometimes called the Goldilocks zone. There are two extremes at work here. First, there's the extreme of drift. If we don't plan, we can often review our year and find, well, actually, there was no shaping to it at all. I didn't lead myself through this year. How did I get here? The other extreme is we overplan things. We create a hamster wheel for ourselves where there's no margin and no spontaneity. I think the sweet spot, the Goldilocks zone, is here. It's somewhere between these two extremes. How can we so shape our year that it's intentional, that we don't drift, but at the same time, we're not creating some kind of performance monster that just discourages us? Well, I think there are always four perspectives that we can look at here. Let's just deal with this first one. It's being mindful of where I am now. It's my status. I need to know how far I am through a piece of work. I also need to know what is the state of my bank account. In certain situations, I need to know whether my relationship with that person is in good heart. Traditionally, though, at this time of year, it's these two other perspectives. Past, which is a valuable resource of the lessons. So as we come up to year end, it will be looking over 2018 and actually some really good experience. It may be uncomfortable for us, but these are opportunities for us to learn. And then there's looking forward into the future, and it's about a more malleable 2019. As someone once said, I love history because it's happened. By the same token, the future has not happened. It is malleable. We have influence over it. In an interview with Bono of U2, he said this: we must wrestle the future from fools because it's more malleable than we think. So there's that tension between the past and the future. And then there's the upward view, which is around the meaning of our lives, wherever we find that. The why. Why are we doing these things? And of course, in the urgency of most of our year, we might rarely ask those questions. But unless we want to fritter our lives away, we need to regularly return to, why am I doing this? Why am I living this way? Why am I prioritizing these things and not these things? We'll come back to these four perspectives in a moment. So I would argue that before the year is over, before 2019 is upon us, December is a good time for planning. And by the same token, January is a good time for review. This seems a little odd with learning the lessons of the past that can be built into the future. But I want to show you a way that's a little bit more flexible than that. So back to our four perspectives. These four perspectives, in a way, create four quadrants. Thinking about each of these quadrants positively, we could say that the intersection between meaning and the past is about identifying our contributions, the feedback that we have got from our colleagues and our customers, from our family, for work that we have achieved. It's the accumulation of the gratitude list that we build up day by day. Then there's the quadrant between the now and the future. This is the area that most planning is done in. It's the area of commitments. It's, I will set myself this goal. I commit myself to going to the gym regularly. I commit myself to reading a book. This is the domain of the New Year's resolution. Now, there's nothing wrong with that as such, but on its own, it's incomplete. Going back to the past, how we are now is probably informed and shaped more by the often unconscious habits that we have lived through in 2018. The habits of diet and exercise, the habits of reading and of leisure, the habits of talking and prioritizing particular individuals. If those habits have served us well, our status now will be good. We will be healthier. We will be more informed. We will be more mindful, and so on. If they've been less than helpful, we need to attend to those and return to them. In the top right quadrant, we're looking at the intersection between meaning and how we're going to live out the next year, the future. This is the quadrant of legacy. We think about this from 2019 coming to a close, or having finished. What would we like to have achieved by this time next year that will have made a contribution? This is about our legacy. So when we look at goals, I always feel a little bit diffident about goal setting, because in the past, when I've set myself challenging goals, smart goals, they've been rife with non-achievement, with failure. And failure can lead to disappointment, and disappointment can lead to discouragement. And that, to me, is anti-self-leadership. As leaders of ourselves, we need to be able to position ourselves in a way that encourages ourselves. We need to motivate ourselves. So a lot of goal-setting practices, I find, set me up for discouragement. Could we do it a different way? Well, let's look at this legacy thing. In his classic 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen R. Covey talked about the funeral scenario, where he invited us to imagine our funerals, where dear friends, family members, colleagues, each stood up and talked about us. And he asked the question, what would you like them to have said? I found this has helped me live in a way that's less trivial. There's a gap between where I am now and what I want people to say about me when I'm gone. But here's the thing. Why should I wait until my funeral? Why couldn't I aim for a legacy to be left to the world, to those around me who are important, and to my work by the end of 2019? What would I like said about me by each of these, if you will, stakeholders? Well, Michael Hyatt talks about life accounts in the same way as Stephen Covey and I talk about relational bank accounts. All of these accounts do not have equal priority. Danny Silk encourages us to look at these different life accounts in terms of a series of concentric circles. We have the most important life account in the center. That is our number one priority. And then we have the next one, and then the next one. Danny Silk argues that in terms of relationships, these are very helpful in terms of drawing up relational boundaries. Those we are most intimate with are towards the center, and those who are more strange to us are on the outside, and therefore we establish appropriate relational boundaries. But this priority between different life accounts is important in our year planning. What is the most important relationship? Now, this might be a person, or it might be you could consider yourself having a relationship to your project or to your client account. It isn't necessarily a relationship with a human being. It is about a relationship with all of your life accounts. For example, because I live by a spiritual faith, my most important relationship is with my God in the center. Number 2 is not my wife. Number 2 is me. Because number 3, my wife, she will only get the best of me if I take care of myself, if I'm healthy, if I'm rested, if I'm energized, if I'm recreated. So I need to make myself number 2. Number 4 is my family. Now just consider this. In the context of a work presentation, so far, all of my priorities, the first 4, are nothing to do with my work. But in a sense, if I don't create that foundation, if I don't prioritize those life accounts, I'm of less value to my clients. And then they come on from there. Most people will identify between 6 and 12 life accounts. I think 9 is about the majority number. But we need to identify them, and we need to prioritize them. Here's an illustration from the strategic doing approach. I like this because it's positive and agile, and I need to be that in the way that I manage my year. First of all, it's positive. I am looking at it from the outcome perspective. I am looking at it from the perspective of those eulogies, those contributions I want to have made by the end of 2019. And that will motivate me to do this. But it's also agile in that I'm experienced enough not to fool myself to know that I can't understand and anticipate everything the year will throw at me. I need margin, I need to be flexible, and I need to experiment. So I will have some things called pathway projects. And then I will have periods where I will review my progress through the 12 months. Every 3 months, I will commit to reviewing how well I've done against the first quarter of my 2019 plan, if you will. And that's okay if I haven't quite made it, because there's learning here, there's adjustment that I can make. And then I need to provide myself with at least a day in December. Let me ask you this. If you have planned a holiday abroad, and that holiday was, say, 7 days, how long would you have spent planning it? I would suggest it's at least a couple of hours. Well, that's interesting, because you're willing to devote 2 hours of your time into planning 7 days of your year. If we were to apply the same equation, I'd probably be providing myself with at least a week to 2 weeks of planning. I know that's not feasible, and I know a week's not feasible either. But in the holiday season, it is feasible for me to take myself away for a day, to unplug from everything online, and to really crack on with this annual plan. And here's my planning day process. I write my legacy. I write my legacy from the most significant life accounts that I have. And then I write the life accounts. I write them in terms of what do I want each one of them to say about me at the end of 2017. I need to identify those. I need to assess what condition they are in right now. And what priority do I give them? Remember, I can only have one number one priority. And then the Pathfinder plans. What can I venture with and commit to from January to March? A Pathfinder plan that will take me forward on this trajectory towards these kind of legacy statements. I need to make sure that throughout my calendar, throughout the year, I have enough margin. I have enough margin to build in, to flex, to take care of myself. So I will need to triage my calendar. I'll need to cut it back. And this will require me saying no to certain things. Someone once said, if you say yes to something, it means multiple no's to something else. And then I will schedule my calendar.